For the past few years, I've been trying to understand why Cartier is doing extremely well in the watch space. They're kind of a jewelry company, they make more products, and they make watches as well. Their jewelry is really popular among women, and their watches seem to be popular among both men and women. They don't actually have too many models, but what they do have is simplicity and a few distinct models, particularly things like the Santos. They've really taken off. I think I kind of get it. So first I'll be going over the watch in hand, and then we'll get on to why I think Cartier is extremely popular and why everyone's buying Cartier. So it seems like. So first of all, this is a big one. This is the Cartier Santos 100. This is not the medium-sized Santos. This is not the Santos large or the Santos small. This is the really big discontinued version of the Santos. So case diameter is 41 millimeters. Lug to lug, that's 51 millimeters. It's got an ETA 2892 movement, and in hand it feels slim, solid, with a decent weight to it, even though it's on a strap. This piece is kind of designed for a strap. I'd say it's designed to also sit tight on the wrist, and that makes a lot of sense when the case diameter and the case profile is rather slim and sort of there's a slight curvature that sits right on the wrist, which is good. So the curved case design really improves the wearability, like mentioned, and it's also aesthetically pleasing. A lot of these Cartier models, the entire top of the watch is mildly curved, and you don't find that in too many watches. Most watches are quite flat and straight. This is kind of an eccentric design, and it's quite nice because the curvature is not too much. It's just about noticeable, and it really helps the watch disappear on the wrist when it's under a cuff. So this is part of that dressy aesthetic that Cartier goes for, and that makes a lot of sense. So positives and negatives. The dial, for example, clean aesthetic with super stretched Roman indices. Now this watch is really large, and the dial's really large because there's not much going on apart from the three hands. So I'm not sure if I'm the biggest fan of how large these indices are. It just kind of looks like a lot of squiggles on the dial and not so precise. I feel like they could have been a bit more creative with the space on the dial. The watch feels rather stretched, feels under thought out in terms of dial layout and use of space. The hands, they feel a little odd in terms of their dimensions. They seem a little small in comparison to the indices. Maybe the hands are dimensioned appropriately, but the super large indices make them feel rather small in contrast. I also like that the dial is a bit of a cream and not just a white. It's not even just off-white, it's more of a cream. The bezel itself, polished, large bezel. Cartiers are known for getting their bezels completely scratched up. That's just something you have to accept when you get one of these pieces brand new. It's really not going to look like that after a few years of wear. So the case is a bit too large for such a plain dial, but had the dial been a little bit more faceted, I think it would be a superb package overall. The case seems slightly monolithic with its design, but it's not too plain. It's curved to seat itself well on a wrist, like mentioned, and I particularly love the machine finished on the side flanks. It's quite well done. The lugs are also quite perfectly executed to me. I really like the shape of these lugs, and it fits the strap options. And the General Santos also, they do the strap options alongside the bracelet extremely well. That execution is among the best you can find, at least in my opinion. That Santos bracelet is sublime. The crown guard integration into the right side flank of the case is perhaps an example of my favorite set of crown guards. It flows so elegantly whilst being sharp, and it's such a great example of a mix between industrial and artistic design. That sounds really pretentious, but I didn't know how else to describe it. In simple words, damn, it's good. Now the strap, I don't care for this type of leather strap. I'm particularly not a fan of alligator straps, so this is really not my thing. But I love the dimensions and the on-hand feel of it. I would swap it out with a silicone band of the same dimensions if there are some aftermarket ones. The butterfly style deployment clasp is nice, but I prefer a single lever style clasp, and just like the ones used by many brands, including the Oyster clasp. It's just less fidgety and easier to operate with one hand. So on to our question of why Cartier is so popular in the watch space and why seemingly everyone is buying Cartier. I've come up with a few reasons. This is not based in fact, this is the opinionated section. And I've also asked my watch dealer friends on a little bit of input on why people are buying Cartier and trends they see in terms of the buyers of the Santos and particular other popular Cartier models, mainly the Santos. So the answer to this is slightly mysterious at first, but it's quite simple. I think the AP Royal Oak would serve as a good analogous example. To me, the Cartier design language is slightly akin to AP. They've got a standout model and various sub-branches of the same thing. It's extremely simple for a watch buyer to understand the watch, the sort of the general design aesthetic and the variations. They've got a standout model and various sub-branches of that model, basically the AP system. Now Cartier has some really strange stuff like the Crash and Ballon de Bleu, and they're very, very different designs, but there are not too many different versions, and the Santos design, I'd say, is the most popular, so let's base it on that. It's extremely simple for a watch buyer to understand and get into and make a decision because there's not too many different options, and the options are kind of specific to different tastes within the same general design aesthetic. So this really helps people who are not totally into watches as well, if they're just getting into it or if they're not too interested but they want something nice on their wrist. So next, for the facts through watch dealers and sales and input on that. Cartier sells watches to 3-4 customer profiles. The first is the mild watch enthusiast, someone who knows of Cartier, the brand cachet, and also appreciates the way the watch looks or feels on the wrist. The second is someone buying jewelry at Cartier for their significant other. I think we've heard this story a lot, and then they end up picking up a piece for themselves, either because they like it or because they want to build store credit histories. So these two buyers make up the majority of Cartier sales. The third category is watch dealers themselves or jewelry dealers that buy this in order to gem set them and basically sell them as iced out watches. So New York is actually a really popular hub for Cartier watches in particular that have been gem set and iced out, and there's a huge market for these over there. And they actually sell really well. You can find these all over 47th Street, and it makes a lot of financial sense for people to actually do this. So the last buyer, probably you, is the watch enthusiast that really likes Cartier watches and notices the small things behind the watch and how it feels on the wrist and how it wears. And so for you or this profile of buyer, the brand history is important. The designs are perhaps iconic and timeless. You may appreciate the simplicity and fantastic mix of artistic and industrial design in watches. Yeah, so that's why Cartier is extremely popular and everyone's buying Cartier. Also, it seems like. To summarize, they've got distinct and classy designs. They're extremely recognizable. They've got extremely high quality execution in materials and engineering. And at the same time, they're in a price bracket that's far more reasonable than most brands that offer such things. So if you like the design, it's really the perfect watch. Cheers. See you in the next vid.